Today I'm going to take a look at If I Could Tell Her. There was a big focus during rehearsals and even on Broadway about just how much to mute this part, just how much to palm mute it. So here's the intro and verse. A big part of this section of the song is making everything feel really, really even. In order to do that, it's all downstrokes and a really even palm mute. And then at the end of each phrase, of course, there's a hammer-on, the first phrase. And the second phrase, it's a pull-off from the pinky to your barred first finger. Getting that hammer-on and pull-off is really important to making it feel even. To practice this, there's a bunch of exercises you can do. One that I learned from classical guitar is pulling off from each finger to each finger. So if we're working on the pinky here, which of course is the hardest, it's not easy, it takes some practice, but you want to get that strength in your pinky, and that way you can make it feel like any other stroke with any other finger. Something else to be careful about with that is that it's really easy to have some resonance on the G string when you're barring with your first finger and pulling off. But when you do that, you get that note, an A, ringing in there, which isn't in the chord. And watch that transition from the open A string to barring on the 4th and 5th frets with your index finger. That's the intro and the verses and the mid-tro. Next, I'm going to take you to the pre-chorus of the song, where we switch to more open chords. Now, each of the different sections of this song, I played in a slightly different part of the neck with a slightly different articulation with the right hand, and I think that that gives each section a little bit of character and supports the overall dynamic arc of the song. So coming out of the verse, we get into the pre-chorus. So a couple things to focus on this section. We want to make sure that the pre-chorus feels open, but isn't too much of a dynamic jump. And so with my right hand, I'm playing pretty lightly and just really focusing on the kind of free, open flowiness of it. It helps to smooth out the transitions between each of those chords to make sure that your top two strings, the B and the E, are ringing openly. So as you move your right hand chord positions, make sure that you're not muting the two open strings there. That'll help everything flow together in a very legato sense. In addition, my right hand strumming pattern changes subtly depending on the harmonic rhythm of the chords. So when it's one chord per bar, I'm playing a rhythmic pattern that subtly emphasizes each of those chord changes, whereas when it opens up 2 chords per bar, I phrase a little bit more over the bar line in order to emphasize that. That last chord was also the subject of a lot of discussion. We wanted it to not be accented, but still feel like a little bit of a stop. And so you don't want to play it too much harder. It's not. And on the other hand, you don't want it to sustain too long, but you also don't want it to sustain too short. I think I kind of wind up thinking of it as a quarter note, but full duration. With a little bit of an arpeggio in there as well. So next up we get into the chorus. And for the chorus, I voice most of my chords up here, still making use of the open B and E string. If I could So a couple things to pay attention to in this. First of all, I just love the combination of the tightness when you're voicing chords up here at the 7th fret, combined with the open strings both in the basses and in the trebles as well. For this chorus, you can play a little bit harder, but it still isn't too much of a jump in dynamic for the first chorus. That's a big thing about this song, is that you really hold your cards, let the tension build throughout the song, so that the second chorus is the real drop. If I could tell everything I see, if I could tell she's everything to me, but when Another thing to note with the dynamics is we're a million worlds apart. The dynamics actually come down there. There's a diminuendo. And because this voicing, this is a G sharp 7 over B sharp, that doesn't really fit with the voicing of the rest of the song because got some clashes in there. Going from a B add 4. This is a C sharp minor 7. Love the sound of that voicing. So that little figure, of course, that's something that came up early in the development of the song. Alex Lacamoire would always play that on piano in the workshops. The main iteration of that lick is not on my guitar part. It's not on the guitar 1 part. It's in the piano, and I think a little bit later it comes in on the electric guitar, guitar 2. But I also kind of catch it without articulating it fully. I'm playing this C sharp minor 7, and then using the open E and the D sharp on the G string. And that's a good thing to practice with your right hand, just making that picking not too heavy, just flow really lightly. And it's also good to have it not interrupt the overall pacing of the right hand strum, even though the dynamic comes down there and you're not fully strumming. So here's the chorus again. If I could tell for the post hook, I'm going to call it, which is the resolution of the chorus. Now I'm back down to using these big open chords, which you haven't actually used so far in this song. Despite the song being in E major and this being the most basic E major chord there is on a guitar, I saved that for the resolution, for the post hook. And that helps give us a sense of settling when the chorus finally resolves. In addition, I strum a little bit further from the bridge for the post hook, just to get a fuller sound. Make sure that you're getting those bass notes really clearly. Another thing to pay attention to is the the transition from the post hook back into the verse. If we're playing here kind of fully, that last chord, I move ever so slightly towards the bridge just to get a nice ringy sound out of it. And all the better if you can leave those top two strings ringing out while you move back to the muted position in the verse. In the full arrangement, that is helped out quite a bit by the fact that the second guitar on electric leaves a big ringing open chord. So that's the form: verse, pre, chorus, post hook. The second verse is pretty similar, except that it's a little bit more grounded once we get to that second pre. But all of the basic mechanics of the part are the same between the first and second verse. So I'm going to jump ahead now to the bridge, which is when it modulates from E major to G major. This is the second post. If I could tell her. So these are all basic open cowboy chords, as they say, with the exception that I would sometimes bring in that D add 4. The dynamics are really important here as well, and the phrasing. Keep an eye out for where the chords are changing and how to phrase either one bar at a time, one chord at a time, or really over the bar line. And that's especially important towards the end of the bridge, where the dynamics come down and it sits on the C chord. Let's call this like a C2, C add 9, but you start bringing in the D sharp note. Now, for the outro half chorus, I put the pick down and I used my thumb and fingers to make it a little bit more folky, a little bit more nuanced and dynamic. If I could tell her. So I'm going to play this stroke slowly to get it feeling natural and flowing. I want to give a quick shout out here to something that Benj and Justin did in the writing that I think is super cool. This is a very simple song, right? It's all built around kind of like a sussy, sus2 energy. And at the same time, in the choruses, they made a melodic choice when it's going to the sixth chord. I have a friend who says the only choice in life that matters is when you go to the sixth chord, because that's often the deepest emotional impact. So in the choruses, we are mostly living in this 4, 1, 6, 5. But the third phrase is when it goes to the sixth chord. And when we go to the 3-7 chord, which sets us up for the sixth, so in G major, that's a B7. Evan sings a D natural on that B7 chord, whereas there's also a D sharp in the chord. And what that makes, even though the guitar and other instruments aren't articulating this, the composite nature of that chord then is a B7 sharp 9. Now that's a very rich chord. A lot of people know that as the Jimi Hendrix chord. It's also used in a lot of jazz. But in this case, it's still kind of within the vocabulary of the song. It's just a very, very rich chord for that one moment, which combined with the lyrics where he's singing about we're worlds apart, it's kind of the moment of the most yearning. So it's really masterful how Benjamin Justin articulated the yearning of the character and synced that up both with the lyrics and the music, the harmony. So that's If I Could Tell Her. As you can see, the nuts and bolts of the song are quite simple, and at the same time, there's a lot of depth and richness to get in there as far as articulation and making it feel easy and simple while really serving the music and not getting in the way of the vocals and the acting.